Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Fearlessly Curious podcast with me, Melissa Indot. This week in store for you, we have this topic which really, really fuels me, and that is comparison. Comparison kills creativity. Comparison is the thief of joy. These are two quotes that you may or may not have heard of. But the reason why I want to bring it to your attention today is because I think that we underestimate, or perhaps we're not even aware of the impact that comparison has on our motivation, on our inspiration, in the way that we see ourselves, in the way that we can live and rise to our full potential in life. But more importantly, how comparison also affects the people that we care about, the people that we work with, our team members, the people that we love dearly. For parents out there, when you compare your children, the way that you compare your relationship with one child to another, the way that you have been compared by your parents with your sister, with your brother, with your siblings, there is an insidious influence and effect that comparison makes to our unconscious mind and how it influences the way that we show up in the world. When we compare, we suggest that there is a version of us that shows up that is less than good. Now, how do we step into the realm of being able to reflect on a skill or on a situation or with a person so that we can see and admire and be inspired by our differences within the energy of comparison, without minimizing the gifts that we have, without minimizing our individuality? That is a very fine line to tread. Holding the intention that we are comparing in order to celebrate, in order to amplify our strengths, rather than to highlight the differences, to highlight what is missing, I feel is an intrinsic part of ensuring that comparison doesn't become the thief of joy. It's an imperative part of ensuring that comparison does not kill our creativity. So let's break it down into 3 different steps. The first step is to ask why. Why am I comparing? What is the purpose of comparing? And if the purpose of comparing is grounded in appreciation, it's grounded in improvement, it's grounded in growth, then the foundation you are laying comes from a place that is expansive. It's not coming from a place of seeing where you are lacking, but seeing the gap from which you can hone your skills, study, do more research in order to reach a different level. And it could be through that comparison that you discover you don't have the skills, or you discover you don't actually want to bridge that gap. And perhaps what makes more sense is to hire somebody, or is to collaborate with that very person that you are comparing with. That is one way to ensure that comparison does not kill creativity, but instead it creates creativity through collaboration, through connection, and through communication. From the perspective of a parent, I've had this with my mom, where she said, oh, it's much easier for me to get along with you than this sibling, or it's very much easier for me to have this conversation with this sibling than it is to have it with you, often makes me feel like there's something missing in me that does not enable a more seamless, smoother, a loving, a calmer, a less conflicting conversation with my mother. What it really comes down to is an inability, or perhaps it's an inflexibility or an unadaptability on my mother's part to be able to shift the way that she responds to a different person. One could even argue that it's obvious to have a different relationship with a different person because we are different people. So by virtue of the fact that we're comparing, actually doesn't make any sense to make a comparison, because it's like saying, let me compare apples with pears. We are different. Let me compare apples with bananas. Let me compare apples with cucumbers. Well, we're different. So if you're going to compare, all you're going to find are the differences. How can comparison cultivate creativity from a personal perspective is when we're comparing a relationship or the ability to connect with one person to another, I can self-reflect. You can say, well, okay, I can have this type of conversation with this person. Why is it I can't have the similar type of conversation with another person with the same ease and grace? There's got to be something about me because it's my perception. These people are different. Can I expect the experience to be different because they are? But my curiosity can ask, why is one a little bit harder? Why does one person or conversation with another person cultivate a discomfort? Because that discomfort is within me, because there's something in me that perceives it as being harder. Perhaps it requires more investment of my time and patience to explain something to the other person that's causing me discomfort. Perhaps I require to be more pedantic in the way I explain things, or perhaps I need to be more curious about the other person. Perhaps we have a different way of using language, of communicating that isn't aligned. So it requires more patience. It requires more curiosity. Perhaps it just simply requires more time. Or could it be that I can come to accept that there's the possibility that two people can speak on parallel lines where we're simply not seeing eye to eye, or we simply do not have the ability, or I do not have the ability to see things through another person's point of view. And that's okay. Can I be okay with that? Can I be okay with not being able to accept another point of view? Is there an opportunity there for me to be able to simply know that there is another point of view that is different to mine, and simply acknowledge it? In fact, we cultivate curiosity as a bridge to learn more about other people, about humanity, and in doing so, learning more about who I am, my ability to understand different things, my ability to be compassionate, my ability to expand my empathy. And lastly, how to prevent comparison from killing your creativity is to be aware that when we are comparing, are we hyper-focusing on the ideas and the methodologies and the strategies of someone else that we can never employ? Are we focusing on our differences and trying to be something and someone that we are not, that we could never be? It's really, really important to have that awareness, because you want to ensure that you're not hyper-focusing on what other people are doing so much that you lose focus on what you can do. You lose focus on your fearless authenticity. You lose direction and you let go of the power of you, of what makes you unique. Because through comparing, through aspiring to be like someone else in your comparison, you lose sight of the unique gifts that only you can bring to the table. Now, why is it important to hold this in our awareness, that comparison can kill creativity and that it is the thief of joy? It actually has a detrimental effect on your mental and emotional well-being. Often when we are hyper-focused on comparing, it can create emotions of frustration. Like, why can't I be like that person? You know, why can't I be as flexible? For someone who's a yoga educator, as I was on my own personal yoga journey, I would always compare myself to these incredible yogis and how strong and flexible they were, almost to the point of personal injury, because I would measure myself against them and I would try to be like them, until I started to self-reflect, to discover my unique physicality. Physiology meant that no matter how much I practiced and no matter how hard I tried, I would never have that level of flexibility or mobility of these other people, because we are literally biologically different. So comparing without awareness can cause harm on an emotional level. It can create frustration and jealousy and low self-esteem. It really made me feel so terrible about myself, that I was just incapable of achieving, acquiring, of reaching these standards of flexibility and mobility. I was beating myself up instead of leaning in to discover my unique physiology and learning to navigate my body my way. So in comparison without awareness, that had a detrimental effect on my mental health and also on my emotional well-being. Comparison without awareness can create unrealistic expectations. We are holding ourselves to a standard that is perhaps unaligned to our own. I'm striving to be of a level that someone else is at, who comes from a different background from me, who has different resources from me, different opportunities than I have. And my level of success may never be equal to their level of success, but it will always be different. But when I'm comparing against their standard and not my own. So comparison without awareness can definitely be very detrimental to our emotional well-being in that instance. And another reason how comparison can be harmful to us is that it can undermine your own sense of success and accomplishment. So let's say you've worked 6 months for a project, or for me, I've been writing a song or curating a coaching program for many, many months, and I've reached all my goals and I'm feeling super, super proud and accomplished and satisfied and fulfilled with it. And then I hyper-focus on what another creator has done, what another songwriter has done, what another coach has achieved. And I compare myself, not knowing the finer details of how they got there, what their personal journey is, that their journey was 6 years long, or perhaps they had a team of 50 people working with them. In comparing without having this information, without this awareness, it's going to undermine my sense of accomplishment. It's going to make me feel like I didn't do enough, like I'm not good enough, like I didn't work hard enough. And that's totally false. That's a total untruth. Comparison without awareness can be detrimental to yours and my mental health and emotional well-being. It's something that I'm very aware of daily, even with this podcast that I put together with your help, is that I'm constantly consuming other podcast creators. And as much as I'm aspiring to be like them, I have to remind myself that in my comparison to aspire and be inspired by other podcasters, I have to remember they've been in the game longer. Okay, so when I see that I've had 250 downloads, which by the way, I'm really, really proud of, when I compare it to someone who's had 1 million downloads, without awareness, that comparison is going to make me feel like, whoa, I've got a long way to go. Oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to get there. And with context, I can remind myself that their podcasts have been years in the making, that perhaps they have a bigger budget than I have, that they have access to better resources, that they have an entire team backing them. And I'm a new kid on the block. So I have to remember to bring context when I'm making a comparison. I hope you found this episode helpful. Comparison can be the thief of joy. Comparison can kill your creativity, but with awareness and with curiosity, constantly checking in, constantly asking yourself, why am I comparing? How am I feeling when I'm making this comparison? Is it killing my joy? Is it robbing me of my excitement and my enthusiasm and my motivation and inspiration? Then these questions, your curiosity is going to help you circumvent. It's going to help you stop, arrest, prevent the mental and emotional damage that comparison can potentially have on you. Always stay curious. Through curiosity, you're just going to continue learning more and more about yourself. And as you learn more about yourself, living in this world, you get to refine the way that you interface with the world. So rather than reacting to every situation, you can stand in your power to respond to a situation with conscious awareness. So until next week, stay fearlessly curious.